have the courage, have the unction, have the boldness to step into it and live this stage of life. You have worked hard and you deserve it. You know what you need to do now? Now you need to go live it. You need to execute it. Hi, I'm Mike Potter, and I'd like to welcome you to the True Wealth Financial Show, a show dedicated to providing you the information and inspiration to navigate financial decisions, intentionally build wealth, and retire with confidence. I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Additionally, you can find more information and resources on our website at truewealth.show. And now, let's get on to this week's episode. Hello. Welcome to another episode of the True Wealth Show. Thanks as always for taking some time to tune in. I'm super excited that you are here today. I want to continue on our conversation from last week talking about a financial framework. So if you listened to last week's episode, we talked about a financial framework for building wealth. Essentially, it has a floor, 2 rails, 7 steps, and a ceiling. In this episode, I want to continue on that same vein and talk specifically about a retirement transition framework. A framework provides an overarching or umbrella for all activities. Compare that to a plan gives the specific actionable steps that's involved. A framework basically consists of the major building blocks of this retirement end state that we're trying to get to, but not necessarily the underpinnings of every detailed aspect involved. As with all things financial, there's a lot of nuances and details associated with these building blocks, but this will give you an overarching step-by-step of what to do when you are beginning to think about retiring. And ideally, you would want to start this 3 to 5 years before you actually transition into retirement. So much like our financial framework from last week, this too has a floor and it has 7 steps building up to it. And so if you think about your financial journey as traveling on an airplane, right? You kind of get in the seat, you buckle in, you taxi out, and bam, you take off. That's essentially your early 20s, late teens when you start your financial journey. And it's exhilarating and maybe a little bit scary, and you're kind of thrust up and you climb and you're climbing. And eventually you get to the point where you can begin to kind of level out and you're heading to the direction of where you're trying to go. Now, there could be some life events that come by, like some turbulence that cause things, and you might have to make some adjustments, go around storms, or change your flight path a little bit based upon circumstances. But eventually, when in your finances, you normally get to the point where you're kind of just cruising along. You're in your 40s and your 50s, you're building wealth, you're doing well at your career, you have control of your money. And at some point, you realize that you're getting close to your destination of retirement. And it's at that point you have really 2 different paths that you could go in terms of descending down to the ground. You could do it like some people do it, and it's very abruptly, and all of a sudden, you're at 40,000 feet, and bam, you want to descend down and close that gap really, really fast. Well, if you just kind of pull that retirement lever and you just say, hey, the proverbial country song, you tell your boss to take this job, and you know what to do with it. That might feel really good in the moment, to kind of tell your boss off. But generally speaking, from a retirement planning perspective, that's going to result eventually in being, a little bit scared, a little bit sick. There might be some damage done. If you're flying a plane and you land it very abruptly, very haphazardly, very unsafely, there could be some damage either to the plane itself, to the runway, to property, potentially to your own body. And so that is a way to do it, but it's probably not the best way. I mean, think about it. Would you like to land on an airplane that way? No, generally what happens is, you're flying along and you can feel that initial descent where they kind of start coming down in altitude. And ideally you want it smooth and steady and comfortable. And you don't want it to be very, nauseating and stressful. You want it to just be very calm and deliberate, like you have complete confidence in what the pilot and co-pilot are doing. And that's how we want retirement transitioning to be as well. Nice and smooth, nice and steady, not stressful, very comfortable, very confident, very in control. And so this framework will help you as you begin your descent in your financial career and you land in retirement. Now, again, just like an airplane, the higher that plane is flying and the longer it's at that higher altitude, the more time it takes to get down to the ground. A plane flying at only 20-something thousand feet, if you've ever been on one of those planes where you basically take up, you level off, and you come back down, and you only go to 25,000 feet, it doesn't take as long to descent to land. But if you're flying internationally, transatlantic, or over the Pacific, and you've been at an altitude of 38, 42,000 feet for 8, 10, 12 hours, you want that descent to be even more gradual. You want it to have more time to descend, and you want to do it smoothly and slowly over an extended period of time. And that's why we say, ideally, if you're executing this transition, you want to start 3, ideally 5 years out as you are planning. Because as you see here in a little bit, there's a handful of steps that is involved. So just like our financial framework, this too has a floor. And that floor essentially is that other framework. So comprehensive financial planning, using that framework. So ideally, as you go into retirement transition, you have your house paid for, you don't have any debt, you have complete control of your money, you have good money management going on, you have a good estate plan taken care of, you have the adequate insurances taken care of, and there might be some changes to some degree, but hopefully you have most of that taken care of. And so this really kind of builds off of that floor of that comprehensive financial framework that we talked about last episode. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that and then come back and check out this one. So what do we do first? What is the first step when it comes to retirement transitioning? Well, the first step is to figure out what you want your retirement life to look like. And we do that through a series of exercises. We call it needs, wants, wishes. So your needs are, what are the basic things that you need from an income perspective? Really, that's what this is a lot of about. A lot of it about is creating that retirement income, because when you stop working, the income lever basically gets turned off, and we need to turn on this retirement income lever over here from various different sources and vehicles that we have prepared, ready to go. But the question is, how much do we actually need? Well, we go through our needs, wants, wishes exercise. So our needs are, what are our basic living things for our standard of living? What's our housing going to look like? What's our food going to look like? What do we need for utilities? What do we need for various different activities we're going to do, adventures we want to do, things like that? What do we need from a living perspective? Some people, depending on the country, part of the country you're in and your tax structures and things like that, you might need just $3,000 a month to cover those needs. Other people might need $10,000. It's going to vary. Is it one person or is it two? How long do we need it for? Right? All those types of things. So we want to go through a series of exercises determining what those needs are. But retirement isn't just about needs. It's also about wants. So the question is, what do we want in retirement? We want to travel. We want to buy an RV. We want to have a second home. We want to do some giving. We want to spend time with our family. Whatever it is that we want to do, what's new hobbies and adventures that we want to pick up? What are the wants? The wants add the spice to life, if you will. We're not talking about just our needs. We have those covered, but these are the things that we want to do. Retirement isn't something boring that we're supposed to do. It's supposed to be an adventure. It's the last chapter of our lives that we get to really, maybe for the first time, you have a blank slate and you get to define what goes on this picture that you're going to paint called retirement. Right? So what are those wants that we want? And then the last thing we want to kind of do is begin to dream and identify about what are our wishes. If money was no object, what could we do? What giving could we do? What adventures could we do? What possessions could we have? What's on our bucket list? What's the thing we've always wanted to go see and do and experience? And that now we have the time freedom and the economic freedom to actually go do. What are those once in a lifetime things that you've put off for 30, 40, 50 years in terms of being responsible and being diligent and faithful to your workplace and to your family that now you have the ability to go do? So what we want to do is we want to kind of get those out of your head, out of your heart, out of your spirit, out of your emotion, get it on paper and actually look at it. That's step one. Step two is now we begin to quantify what those things look like. We need to build out a cash flow plan to support the needs, wants, and wishes we just identified. We might have more money than we need. We might have less money than we need. And so how much money do we need per month, per quarter, per year to sustain and achieve this life we just laid out? Now, it might not all work out. It might not all work out in year one. Some of it might be in year 5. Some of it might be in year 10. And so this is an iterative process between step 1 and step 2. So we identify what we need, want, and wish. Then we try to build out the cash flow, what it will cost, when we need money, the timing of it, the retirement income to support it. And we might find out we have more money so we can do more wants and wishes, or we might find out, our wants and wishes are a little bit beyond what we can afford. And so we need to scope those down to some degree, but we can change the needs and have some of the wants and do some of that trade-off conversations right there. And so those two are very iterative in nature. Generally, we use 2 different tools from a financial planning perspective to build out those cash flow plans. One is a forward-looking tool. So we enter all of those needs, wants, and wishes in based upon the assets that we have, the income sources that we have, and we kind of project out based upon market returns and do something called a Monte Carlo analysis. And what is our probability of success? Are we going to make it, or are we going to fail all the time, right? Where is our comfort level as to how we're doing? The other tool is essentially looking backwards. So we take all of our future needs, wants, and wishes, all of our future income sources, and we push those out based upon inflation, and we kind of total those up and bring them back to today's dollars from a balance sheet perspective. Here's what we need, here's what we have, and we see, do we have an adequate funding amount? Are we constrained? Do we not have enough money to do that? Or are we overfunded? Again, we can kind of go back and revisit some of those needs, wants, and wishes. Those 2 steps there generally are going to take you a lot of time because your needs, wants, and wishes are going to change. You're not going to do it one time and then that's it, right? It's going to evolve over time, which then brings us to step 3. So step 3 is build out a non-financial plan, So historically, when you're raising a family, when you're working, time is constrained. You don't have a lot of time. As the kids leave and transition out and you become empty nesters, generally you have a little bit more time, but you still have work. And most people work 40 to 45 hours in America, plus commute times, which for some of you who are maybe remote, you don't have that as much, but there's getting ready, there's coming home, there's decompressing, all those types of events. And so our careers and our jobs still take up a large amount of time while we're working, even though we don't have the kids' activities and this activities and all those kind of things, we still have a lot of time absorbed by our work. Well, when you begin to transition, or when you transition, should I say, and your work goes away, you have a lot of time. One of the things that I like to help people who are transitioning into retirement is to say that in retirement, every day is a Saturday. Like if you think about it, when you work, Monday through Friday, generally the alarm clock's going off, you're getting up, you have a routine, you're going about doing what you're doing. You go to work, you come home, you fix dinner, you have a couple hours to do whatever you need to do, you go to sleep, and you rinse and repeat every weekday. But what happens on Saturdays? On Saturdays, Generally, the alarm clock doesn't go off. Generally, you can sleep in on Saturday. Saturday is an empty slate. You can wake up and go about doing whatever it is that you want to do. Most people do their shopping on Saturdays. Historically, Americans spend more money on Saturdays than any other day of the week because it's the day they go to the grocery store. It's the day they run their errands. It's the day they do purchases, go to the mall, do events, things like that. Well, when you're retired, that's how every day is. Every day is like a Saturday. There's no alarm clock unless you choose to set it. There's nowhere you have to be unless you choose to make an appointment for such. And you can go do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it, just like a normal Saturday. Well, the thing is, if every day is like that, you're not used to that. And so you have this big void of time now that you have to fill. And where a lot of people struggle when it comes to retirement transitioning is they've never really thought about that. They just think, hey, I don't have to work. That's all I care about. Well, the question is then, what are you going to do with the rest of your days? This helps you be intentional, thoughtful, purposeful about what you're going to do with your time. A lot of retirees actually go through a mild to somewhat, for some, very maybe one of the worst of their lives, state of depression. Because if you think about it, for work, a lot of people, their work is a sense of commitment and responsibility. You have your social interactions there. You've kind of built your life around it to some degree. That dictates, when you go to work and when you leave. And so you kind of build your life around that. Well, when that goes away, a lot of people, don't know what to do at that time. For some people, their identity is wrapped up in that. We say, hey, my name's Mike. What do you do? Oh, I'm a financial planner. What do you do? It's one of the first topics we talk about when we meet somebody because it's kind of a big portion of us for most people, especially for guys, more so for guys than for ladies, right? It's our identity. And we're no longer the policeman, the maintenance manager, the airline pilot, the banker, the construction manager, the accountant, whatever it is that you've done. When you're no longer that, what do? I'm retired. Well, that's a great thing to do too. But the question is, what's that retirement going to be? A lot of people say, oh, I'm retired. I'm tired. Well, that doesn't sound very exciting, right? So what do we want to do with our time? What's new hobbies we want to do? What's new activities we want to do? We get to reshape our identity. We get to add new purposes to our life. What kind of ministries or volunteering efforts do we want to get into? You have so much time now to do the things that you want to do. But the question is, what is it? And so step 3, in terms of building out that non-financial plan, is going to help drive those things out. So this too is iterative to some degree back to step 1, because as you begin thinking about those non-financial things of time and activities, hobbies, identity, things like that, those might have a cost. So we might have to circle back around to, oh, I didn't realize that this hobby that I was going to get into costs as much as it does. I didn't even have that on my one. So now I want to build that in, which changes our cash flow plan and so on and so forth. So really steps 1, 2, and 3 are iterative in nature, meaning that they're not just done once. You kind of do it, you reflect on it, you change it, and you come back around. And the reality is you're going to kind of somewhat do that all throughout retirement. But at least having a good, solid plan going in helps you identify what you want to do. And ideally, if you can have those cash flows laid out for the first 5 years, knowing what you need and where it's coming from, it will serve you very well because you would then have a track to run on. Just like that descent, we just don't want to haphazardly come down, nice, smooth, and slowly so that a pilot knows, hey, I'm 100 miles away, I need to be at this altitude and this speed. 50 miles an hour, I need to be at this altitude and this speed. 2 miles away, I need to be at this altitude and this speed, right? It's very intentionally planned. The same thing is done here. Where's your money coming from? When do you need it? Where's it going to go, etc.? Which leads us to step 4. Step 4 then is where we arrange our retirement income, right? So depending on your situation, and everybody's different, you're going to have various vehicles or assets that you're going to use to produce the income, right? So when you're working, generally you're building up this nest egg and you have this income. Well, when you turn off the job and the income goes away, we have to turn on some spigot because everybody needs an income. Regardless of you're working or not, you still need income. You still have bills that you have to pay. So we have to create what's called a retirement income for you. Well, what are some various sources? It could be a whole bunch of things. For most people, Social Security will be involved somewhere. Depending on your working career, some people have pensions, right? So government workers generally have pensions. Large corporations, if you've been there for a long time, have pensions. Some organizations have pensions, if you think like railroads and things like that. Utilities, to some degree, have pensions. So some people might have a pension income. Now, for those who are retiring more and more, companies stopped doing pensions in the really early 80s. And so pensions kind of went away for a lot of people. And so it was replaced with defined contribution plans or 401ks, 403bs, 457s, thrift savings plans, things like that. Various accounts that you could put money into to build. So you could have those. You could also have individual retirement accounts, right? IRAs that you set up, either pre-tax traditional or Roth IRAs or rollover IRAs where you've moved money over time. So you have those at your disposal. Maybe you have passive income, dividends from some sort of stocks that you own. Maybe it's options that you had from your company. It could be rental real estate that you have or business ownerships that you have. So all those would get brought into consideration. It could be part-time jobs as well. Maybe you're not retiring completely and completely shutting off the spigot. You're just going down to part-time. Or maybe you're going to start a new business, a new venture, an encore career, if you will, that you've always wanted to go do. So various different things associated like that. So what do we have to do? We have to line up all those incomes to know when they're coming in, how much is going to coming in. It supports that lifestyle and that cash flow that we built out in those earlier steps, right? So once we explore all those different assets and vehicles you have, we have to figure out money for year one, which vehicle or asset are we going to tap into? Money for year two, which combination of vehicles or assets are we going to tap into? What account is the money coming from? And we need to have them positioned so that they are ready to go, which leads us to the next step, step 5, which is what I call practice retirement. And this is going to be very different based upon your life situations. But one of the things that everybody can do is they can begin practicing the hobbies that they want to begin to get into, right? So we talked about that non-financial plan in step 3. Well, this is where we can explore to what level do we want to get involved? How much do we want to get involved? Let's begin practicing it. Let's get associated with people who do that thing, whether we have to buy our way into it, get a coach. For example, if you want to learn tennis or golf, you might get a coach. If you want to go, get into fishing or hunting, you want to maybe join a club that does those things. If you want to get into, woodworking, for example, something like that. Some ladies like crafts. There's all kinds of sewing and quilting clubs and all kinds of things like that, as well as volunteer things where you can get involved with those. So beginning to reach out and getting those connections and begin practicing it so that, because what you think you might want to do, you might not really like it. Some people say, oh, I just want to go do woodworking until you get in there. And then you realize that, it's not all that fun. Or you might want to go do a quilting. And then you realize, I don't have the hand-to-eye coordination to do this anymore. So I don't really want to do this, right? But begin practicing it with those activities and those hobbies. Another way you can practice with retirement is that involved with setting up that systematic paycheck, right? Depending on where you work, some people get paid every week. Some people get paid every 2 weeks. Some people get paid once a month. Depends on their company or their business. Well, now you might want to continue that. You might want to get paid every week like you did before. You might not. Most retirees set their incomes up where it comes in really just one time a month. They have to manage that for the month and, it works. Some people do it too, just depends on their Social Security timing, right? But it's really up to you. You can practice that. Well, you can simulate that before you actually retire. and when we get to money management, we'll talk about this, managing money like a retiree using the non-budgeting budget system. I know it's a handful of words, but the non-budgeting budget system, which is where you simulate yourself, where you only pay yourself once or twice a month, like you would from a retirement accounts, but you do it from savings instead. So you set your paychecks going to your savings, and then you can control when those transitions or those transfers are coming into your checking account. That's a way you can practice. You might have the ability to take a sabbatical or an extended vacation, right? If you're married, you think the idea of being alone in your house with your spouse 24 hours a day might be great until you do it. And then you might not like, whoa, this is just too much, right? Or it may not be, right? But you get to test it. You might think the idea of living in a camper, going around the United States and into Canada, maybe down to Mexico will be great. Well, go do it for a month. And then you might realize, I don't really like this. This is too small. I don't know. I'm not saying you would. It could be, hey, this is great, but you know what? Now you've practiced it a little bit. Now you've experienced it a little bit so that you can really test and validate, hey, I really am looking forward to this. And it just might whet the appetite to make you want to retire sooner, or it might make you throw the brakes a little bit and say, we might have to go back again to do some of that non-financial planning things and try to determine, is this really what we want in life? So practice. Don't make those herky-jerky decisions. Ease into it, be intentional, and try to practice as best you can. Step 6, this is the easiest one, which is retirement transition, where you actually kind of set the date on the calendar, you get ready to pull the lever. But you're thinking about it from a timing perspective, from a calendar perspective. Different careers have different seasonal work. So it might be, hey, I want to leave at the end of the year, December 1st. For accountants and stuff, it might be more May after tax season is done. For people who do a lot of work outside, seasonal stuff in the summer, the end of the summer might be the best time to actually kind of pull the lever. It's going to be different for everybody. It's going to be different between the timing of you and your spouse. Are you doing it together? Is one going first, then the other one, right? How's that going to work out? It's ensuring that we have the new health insurance. If our health insurance is tied to work, which it is for most people, do we have that set to go? Because you can't just turn on Medicare, basically in one day. There's a couple months involved with that. For example, if that's what you're using. Same thing with getting healthcare from the exchange, various things like that. Might be from a work responsibilities perspective, right? You have to finish up some projects or make some transitions with the new person taking your job. Might also be timing of your income, right? So you might set yourself up in the first part of the year where you can retire, I'm just making this up, maybe in July, and you have enough income and savings so it's going to last you the rest of the year, so you don't have to actually pull any things until the next year. So if you're timing, for example, you're trying to time your 59 and a half mark, maybe you wait till your 60th year where the 59 and a half you have savings, and then you're executing your retirement money where you're pulling from a 401k or an IRA at age 60, right? There's all kinds of timing elements that's involved with that as well. So picking a date on the calendar, once you have everything kind of lined up, and again, it's intentional, it's purposeful, it's smooth, it's not stressful, it's not herky-jerky, it's not reactive, it's very, very, very peaceful, very controlling, very confidently. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to transition into retirement with confidence, which then leads us to step 7. So if you have actually done this stuff where you have laid the foundation, your house is paid off, you have no debt, you have that emergency fund, you've been saving and investing all along the way, you have the financial framework set, and you've actually taken the time to go through intelligent, purposeful, diligent planning and work through all these various steps. You know what 7 is? 7 is go live that retirement with joy and with gladness and with blessings on it, right? Step into it. Be uncomfortable. Go do those things that you want to do. You only get one life. This is the time. You've put it off for so long. Have the courage, have the unction, have the boldness to step into it and live this stage of life. You have worked hard and you deserve it. You know what you need to do now? Now you need to go live it. You need to execute it. You need to step into it with vigor and energy and emotion and passion and actually do it. Don't just sit on your couch and watch TV. Unless, of course, that's intentionally what you want to do. If that's what you said you want to do all your life, the freedom to sit on your couch and watch TV, then that's great. Do that with energy and vigor and excitement and unction. But if it's not, and you want to do something else, go do it. Go take those trips. Go travel. Go do those activities. Get involved with those clubs. Do those things that you've always wanted to do. Because at some point we'll do another episode on the retirement years, there's really 3 phases to retirement. We call them the initial one, which is kind of the go-go years, where you have all this time freedom, all this economic freedom. You still have your health, you're energetic, and right, it's the go-go years. And then we come down to, you age a little bit and you get into those slow go years where, your health's not as good. You're slowing down a little bit. You have a lot more doctor's visits and things like that. And you kind of just slow down a little bit more. And then you have those later stages, generally the last year or two in retirement, where it's kind of no-go years, where maybe you're in bed, maybe you're in a wheelchair, maybe you're in a home, maybe you don't have all the functionality that you once did. Enjoy those go-go years. If you've done the planning, if you've done the hard work, if you have the money, go live your retirement dreams, because you only get one chance. So there you go. 7 steps to transition into retirement. Needs, wants, and wishes. Build that retirement cash flow plan, ideally for 5 years. Build out that non-financial plan. Arrange the income so it's all set up. Practice retirement. Set up that retirement transition where we pull that lever. And when you get to that point, go live your retirement dreams. Again, there's a PDF summarizing these things that you can print out and utilize and visualize and use for your own planning if you want. You can find that at truewealth.show/resources. You'll see it, Retirement Framework PDF. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them to me at mike@thetruewealth.show. And as always, thanks for taking the time to listen in. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. Thank you again for taking the time to watch this week's episode of The True Wealth Show. I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Please feel free to visit www.truewealth.show for more information and resources. One final note as we wrap up today's show. While I hope the information you've been provided has been insightful and valuable for you, it's really for information and educational purposes only. Prior to making any decisions or taking any actions, I'd strongly encourage you to reach out and talk to your legal, tax, estate, or financial advisor who's familiar with the unique circumstances of your situation. Thanks again for taking the time to watch it. Hope you have a great day.